Hello everyone, this is the Custoda, Aaron, and this is the first video in Xamarin Forms Master Detail with Prism. And so, as I kind of promised in our intro video, I'm going to go through from ground up and build an app using Master Detail in Prism. We're going to use Xamarin Studio today, but in future videos I may switch over back and forth between Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio. The good news is that for the most part, there's very little differences between Xamarin Studio and Visual Studio. For the sake of these videos, I would say whatever environment you like, continue using that. I myself like the text editor in Visual Studio better than Xamarin Studio, but I like the performance of talking to the simulators and emulators better on the Mac than on the PC. For me, I'm running a PC inside of Parallels, and so it does slow down a little bit with the recording process. So once again, I do use both, but for this video, I will be using Xamarin Studio. Start out with, for Prism, what is Prism? Prism's a framework that gives you the ability to do MVVM inside of Xamarin Forms, and it's pretty great. It was the heart of labor from this guy right here, Brian. You want to go ahead and go to his blog here, which I'll put in a link in the video description down here. And one of the things that you definitely want to get right away if you're going to be using Xamarin Forms is Prism. It's amazing. It's got some really cool navigation stuff that it adds in. Obviously, like I said earlier, master detail. It's also added some stuff with events and, and messaging basically via events. And it's really just a great thing. It's very light compared to other MVVM frameworks that you may have used in the past. I've come from MVVM Cross. I've used MVVM Lite also, and in the web I've used several different frameworks, including Knockout. The good news is that if you're used to both Silverlight and WPF with Prism combo, you're going to feel at home. Now, you may read on the internet, some people don't like Unity, and Brian is bundling Unity in for IOC. That doesn't mean you're tied to that. You could basically take Unity out and inject in tiny IOC, or name your flavor of IOC that you're comfortable with. Eject. I've personally used Tiny IOC in the past, and it's much like its name, it's tiny and it's pretty fast. However, Unity is bulletproof, and for these videos, we will continue using Unity, and and maybe in the future, I'll show you how to change it out, and if you want to use something different. So, from Brian's website, he does have an article about the Prism Template Pack. You want to install that. Nobody wants to be a superhero and try to figure out, like, how do I set up all the different files and get the schema right at the top of them when I'm building a new page. How do I get the NuGets right so that, all the NuGet packages are there when I build a new project. Brian's done all that work for you, and you should reap his labors, and so you don't have to do that. And so you really want to install this Prism Template Pack. It's both available in Visual Studio and also Xamarin Studio, which is pretty rare to have a plugin in Xamarin Studio. So Brian, you're amazing. Let's go ahead and get that. So for me, I already have it installed, but I'll walk you through the process in Xamarin Studio how to do it. You're going to go into Xamarin Studio's menu, and from there you're going to go to Add-ins. And from Add-ins, you would, of course, go to the gallery and search for it. Now, if I just do Prism Template Pack, I'll just do Prism Temp, for example. Nothing shows up because it's already installed. Because right here is the Prism Template Pack. For you, you'd be under Gallery. You'd click on it. You'd say Install, and you have the Prism Template Pack then, and it's great. Don't be a superhero on this kind of stuff. Go get the template pack. It's just going to save you so much time. You've already made the decision, if you're doing Xamarin Studio with Xamarin Forms and stuff, that you want to basically try to be more efficient by using something like Xamarin Forms. So then Prism's going to make you even more efficient. On top of that, Brian's template pack is going to save you a bunch of time that you'd normally have to do a bunch of manual wiring up of like the schemas and stuff like that. Just go ahead and do that, man. His templates are great, and he's got this blog article that explains what he's got going on. Obviously, right here we have with Xamarin Forms is pretty great. Things to remember is that Prism's not just for Xamarin Forms; it's also out there for Universal Presentation, Windows Universal Presentation. Sorry, that's WPF, and so you can see here in this blog article he goes through all this stuff in great detail. So Brian, he makes Prism. He does it in his own free time. That the dude's not getting paid. So one, thank you, man, because you're making all of us our lives easier. You're awesome. Two, he's got a Slack channel, so you can go on to go ahead and just Google Prism Slack. I want to say that the Slack channel is like oh, let me look it up here. I do have Slack on a separate screen, and I am a member on there. I'm talking to the peeps from time to time. Prismlibrary.slack.com. I'll put a link out there also. And you can kind of go out there on Slack and get in there. But man, just first of all, be nice. If you're going to go on Slack and talk to developers and stuff, just don't complain about everything in the universe, because people like Brian are doing this in their free time. They have families. They're doing this because they're trying to do something better for the community. So one of the worst things you could do is just go in there and treat people like garbage. Just don't do that. That's just not cool. The toxicity of the internet is already bad. Us developers, we need to stick together and be awesome to each other. So don't do that. But if you do have questions, throw them out there. There's a Xamarin Forums special channel that you can kind of go in, hashtag Xamarin Forums, Xamarin Dash Forums, and it's pretty great. A lot of times people, if you're a newbie, are going to be out there answering questions. I'm out there from time to time. I spend more time in the Xamarin Slack channel than I do Prism, because I do a lot more work in the past with MVM Cross. So I do help a lot of newbies out with that, and that's also another framework, however, very heavy compared to Prism. There's a lot of things that it could do, but man, it comes at a big cost, and it's designed for classic apps, or classic applications are far more complicated. So of course that framework has to be a lot more complicated. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Prism. So let's get started. Let's build a brand new project. And so to do that, obviously we go to File, and we want to build a new solution. Now, I'm a man that likes to keep all my stuff tidy and neat on my machine. That's no shock to many of you that know me. So we're going to make sure that we go through and set up everything nice and clean. We'll also go through and save stuff in my default code folder and all that good stuff. You can put your code wherever you want. It's up to you. Just figure out a way to make yourself efficient, and you're good to go. So you can see here under multi-platform apps, because I got Brian's plugin installed. Look at that, man. Prism Unity app. That's pretty great. Right out of the box, we're going to get this built-in, pre-wired up with the NuGets of Prism and Unity, and everything just will be kind of working for you. You don't have to go through all the pain and hassle of setting up a special Unity app for your app. And like I said, when you make new pages, you don't have to go through and worry about, what's the namespaces I have to put in, and all those things that, you could do by hand. I mean, Prism's not, it's just a NuGet package. You could do all this stuff, but why when Brian did all that extra work? So let's go ahead and click next. We need to store it somewhere. We're on the Custodes machine here, so let's just call this, we're going to, I don't want to reuse this name, so let's call this Xamarin Forms Master Detail Training, and that sounds great. Over here, that also looks pretty great. We're going to do both Android and iOS. We're going to do a portable class library. PCL is the current hot stuff. Obviously, with .NET Standard, some different ways of doing things are coming down the pipeline, but with Xamarin development, we're just not there yet, so we'll continue to use PCL. If you're a crazy person, you can use shared library. It's fine, but, and I know Miguel talks about it all the time, that he prefers that versus portable class library. I find that the portable class library is a very clean way of doing things and less confusing, and so that's the reason why I choose that. So we're going to go ahead and click next here. You can name you don't have to name the project same thing as mine. That's up to you. I do not like storing my code in the projects folder. I have a folder called code that I keep all my stuff in. We are going to do a get on this because this will be going out to the internet. It will be going out to GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and keep the get stuff checked. If you're just doing this at home, you don't have to do that. However, man, use GitHub. It's free. You're doing all this little POC stuff, learning stuff, your machine dies, all your code's out there. That's pretty cool. Also, if you're new to this and you're trying to eventually pick up a job, having code examples out on GitHub is not a bad thing. You can say, hey, look, I'm new to this, but I got a bunch of stuff on GitHub I've been working on, and that's possible employers then can, go out there and look at your code. You're building yourself a nice repository of stuff that you can prove to people that, hey, I'm passionate about this coding stuff, and I want to do this. So yeah, I don't recommend hoarding your code if you can all help it. And once again, like I said, if your machine dies, that's really bad. Puppy tears. So use use something like GitHub or VS Online. Both those are very viable solutions for backing up your code. I'm going to click the Create button, and hopefully through the magics of the Xamarin Forms and Xamarin Studio, we'll see that we're adding some packages. That's Brian's template going through and getting us the NuGets for the Unities that the version of Unity that he's supporting on top of obviously Prism. And we've already got some licensing agreements from Microsoft saying, hey, you're adding some stuff that's we wrote. Are you sure? Agree to that. So yeah, just go ahead and agree to that. We're just about done here. As we can see, we're adding packages. The little blue line keeps moving. If you wave your mouse up here and try to move it faster, it doesn't go any faster. It's not a touch screen. At least my computer's not a touch screen. Can't put your finger up there by the blue line and touch it to try to make it go faster. But if we kind of go through here while it's adding the packages, we take a look here at our setup. We've got a pretty basic Xamarin Forms project. If you've done Xamarin Forms in the past, you'll notice that there's obviously over in the Android world, we got this main activity that's kind of needed because there's not app delegate in Android per se as there is the app delegate in iOS. Turns out there is, but we're not going to get into that. Most people bootstrap Android in a main activity, but there is something called an Android application, and you can inherit from one of those objects, and that's how you can get access to low-level stuff like the JNI bridge. However, most people have just an activity that the app launches, and that's where they do all their bootstrappings off that. We're probably not going to spend a huge amount of time over in the iOS and Android world in their projects because this is Xamarin Forms, man. We're going to try to do all we can in the shared project library. This is our shared code. However, I will note that under the info and the entitlements, depending on the stuff that you do have to edit those things to get your dev certificates and whatever, app profile you're going to be using for your development, stuff like that. That stuff does have to be modified, and we'll do that afterward. We'll, usually if you're just using the simulator and emulators, the advantages, you don't have to necessarily worry about that stuff too much as long as Xcode is, if you have a developer account set up, you're not having to go through and deal with that. And we're not going to distro this out to the App Store, so we don't have to, do that. It's a separate video to go through and explain the whole distribution process in iOS. It can be rather painful, to be honest with you, based on my experience in the past. So before we do anything else, let's go ahead and look at the packages folder, see what we got ourselves into. We got a Prism Core. That's obviously Prism Core functionality that is shared code between all the different platforms that Brian's supporting. Like I said before, he's got stuff out there for Windows Presentation Framework, WPF. He's also got stuff out there for Universal Windows presentation. So this isn't just a Xamarin Forms tech, and that's why Brian deserves even more kudos because, like I said, it's a labor of love. He's out there doing it. So again, dude, thanks, man, for creating a really awesome framework and really supporting the community on this kind of stuff. We've got Prism Forms, and that's his code for the support of Xamarin Forms. And of course we have Unity, and that's the Prism Unity Forms is his code that will get you up and running some helper classes for Unity support. And of course Unity is the IOC container dependency injection framework that Microsoft wrote. And it was a while back that Microsoft was used to have this library called the Best Practices Library, and there was a bunch of cool stuff in there. And kind of, I think it was around 2008 if I remember right. That's when I want to say that's right around what time I saw it for the first time. And it was very quickly a lot of people talking about it and talking about, standardizing the way that we do things with services and, all these kind of things, and different patterns became a big hot topic of conversation. And obviously from that, years later now we have things like ASP.NET, MVC, and everyone's concerned about patterns in the modern day here. The most hottest stuff obviously is MVVM. And the model view is really popular because of its testing capabilities. It's an interview question I usually ask people is, why would you use that thing? Most people say, well, you can separate code and that's great. And that's the reason to do it. But man, the minute that you separate your business logic into your view model, for example, you can test all that code. And then once you have your UI test kind of encapsulated out, you could test your UI code also with unit tests. So you have this very clean line and separation in the sand between your where your business code lives and where your view code lives. If you go to MVC, things can get kind of dirty. In fact, your controllers become really fat. If you're doing Object-C or Swift programming on iOS, a lot of times you get these controllers that are just huge gobs of code. And that's because, once again, in that particular framework, all the business logic can get muddled up with the controller code, which is sending that information in those objects and all the messaging stuff down to the view. So I wouldn't say that it's a bad framework. Don't get me wrong, and there's things you can do to clean that up using things like services and stuff. But still, when it comes down to it, MVVM is a very clean framework and has a very clear definition of where you should be drawing the line and stand of things. So the final package, of course, is Xamarin Forms, and that's needed to do Xamarin Forms development. Now, the default Xamarin Studio here, as you can see here, the template that it came with has an older version of Xamarin Forms in there. And this could be Brian's template that's causing this, because he obviously has a packages file. That's how all this NuGet stuff works, is in the packages config. It has what version that should be used. So it could be that Brian's template needs to be updated to up the version of Xamarin Forms. I might actually message him later on Skype, or not Skype, on Slack about that, just to see if that's the case. But there's an update available, and you should be taking all the updates for Xamarin Forms to start out with. That is almost kind of critical, especially if you're doing a new project. Now, if you take a look here under Droid and under iOS, there's definitely packages that need to be updated. I'm not going to worry about those too bad right now. What I want to do is just build and see this thing come up. That's always the very first thing that I like to see when I'm doing new projects. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go here and whoa, hold the horses for a second here. We got a problem. We can't even build. What's going on here? This is well known. So if you watch the last video, I already created all this stuff and I already ran into all of it. And I knew that there's going to be a couple small little hiccups in this, and it's not all too difficult here. This is a namespace problem. You can see here we have Prism Unity, but we don't have anything else kind of set up, and so it's looking for main page here. It said, hey, I don't have a reference to main page, and that's because the reference is missing. So we can right click, go to fix, and then go ahead and say using Xamarin Forms, views. And that has to do, you're probably saying, well, what the heck's going on here, Aaron? Why do you have a double views? That's a very interesting question. Some of you may not be getting this error. You may get a different error, and it has to do with the application setup of over in both iOS and Droid, which I'll get into in a second. This has to do with a preferences setting inside of your Xamarin Studio under naming policies. And so I wanted to kind of check this to explain to people what's going on, the things you could possibly run into. Xamarin Studio out of the box does not have the same level of namespacing naming that Visual Studio does. Instead, if you go into your Xamarin Studio and go into preferences, this window comes up, scroll down until you find source code. Go into .NET naming policies, and you want to take a look at this. And it reads pretty well. We want to associate the namespace with the directory name. So if you make a folder, for example, it's going to make a namespace. And it says the default namespace as root. Do we want it flat or hierarchical? And you can see here, if you select the differences, it's giving you examples. Here we have project name, namespace. If we have a folder, it'd be project name, namespace A, and then obviously if there's a nested folder, it'd be B. Some people like it flat. Some people like it like this. It's up to you to make the decision on how you want to do that. Or if you just don't want that default namespace as root, you could just select this and then it doesn't do that. You have to come up with how you like your namespacing no matter what. The real problem I have with this is obviously the views, it's got a double views on it. And that does not work for me. I don't like the double root. And you can see here, if I were to take this off, it's going to say, hey, we'll make these changes, but in the future, we're not going to, we're definitely not going to go through and update your existing code out there because that's a pain in the butt. And so you just need to know that whatever you change here, if you don't like things and it's a brand new project you're setting up, you may want to just delete that folder and recreate the project. Or like I said, if you could just live with it, You can click OK here. What you don't want to do is this, man. Don't do this. Don't be the guy that goes through and says, hey, okay, well, I can fix this. I'll just go through and go into my views folder and I'll fix my class. Yeah, because I can go into CS backend and go, okay, where's the namespace here? Oh, there's the double views. So I'll just delete that second views. That seems like it's great. But then this breaks. Why does this break? Well, because the namespace is also in the XAML code. Oh, well, we can go fix that too. We'll just go into here and find our XAML code, and we'll go through and fix the namespace here. Let's go find our namespace. Hey, here it is. Our namespace is here, and it has a double view in it. I'll fix it here. That sounds great. What happens when you make another page, and another page, and another page? Yeah, that becomes kind of painful after a while. So that's not necessarily the way that you want to solve this problem either. Let's go ahead and try building again. We're probably going to run into a couple more errors, if I remember right, within the iOS project and the app delegate. If I want to remember right, there's a namespace issue here. So here we go. And we're in the app delegate. I kind of called that. If we go look here, we got 2 build errors. The first one saying that, hey, I have a new iOS initiator of a new app type, but yeah, I can't figure this stuff out. And that's because the iOS initializer is coming from iPlatform initializer, and that is part of Prism Unity, but we don't have a reference to it up here. And so we just have to kind of right click, go to quick fix using Prism Unity. That should fix both this. Now we have our Unity container problem here. We can click on that person, go, hey, let's go ahead and use the Microsoft Practices Unity project. As I was kind of explaining earlier, that's where a lot of this magic came from. Even Prism, my understanding, was born from that library. You know, it was originally released as a add-on for things like WPF. And Brian has some great, on Channel 9, there's something called the Xamarin Show, and Brian's been on there and kind of talked about this in great detail. If you do enjoy, like, listen other developers talk, go ahead and just Google Channel 9. It's a MSDN thing that Microsoft puts together, and look for the Xamarin Show. And man, it's really good stuff. James is on there, one of the guys from Xamarin, always pushing out hot tech advice and stuff like that. It's really, really great way to learn and get tips on the latest stuff dealing with Xamarin. That should fix, from my memory, that should fix all of our compiling problems. So let's go ahead and click the run button and see where we kind of sit. And we should be able to go through, and the hopefully the simulator comes up here. Oh, I actually clicked away from it, so it went away. But it does take a few seconds first time you're starting up the simulator to get its bits up and running. And once that happens, we'll push our project over to the simulator. We'll run it. And what we're looking to do is just make sure that it, the Hello World kind of project comes up, and that we at least get what we think we should. White screen of nothing. Perfect. That sounds about right. Let's go ahead and make sure that we can get a white screen of something instead of a white screen of nothing. Let's just go ahead and go to the views and make our very first change here. So let's, to start out with, man, I'm on a big widescreen monitor. One thing that does drive me crazy in Xamarin Studio is there's no text wrapping. And so I spend a lot of time doing this. There's probably a better way of doing that, but man, just so I could see everything that's going on, because that is annoying as crap. And because of the fact that I like to have 2 code windows open at once, this gets even worse for me, because I will literally have a view model open right side by side with my view. What's going on here? Get this open. Should I just tab over here? Because then if I'm writing view code, I can go, oh, okay, here's my property in my view model. That comes over here to my property over here in my view. It makes it very clean. This is a very efficient way to develop. And you can even get rid of the solution window, hide that thing, and pin it back up. And now you've got a really clean interface to do coding. So pro tips, really great way to doing this stuff. We can see here, we'll go into the whole navigation stuff a little bit later, but let's, in our stack layout here, add in our label, label text equals, let's do hello world. We're going to do highly original here, folks, and build that, and make sure, we should probably add some padding onto that so that it's not hugging the screen so much. That does annoy the crap out of me when that happens, but let's go ahead and bring this up anyways. And hello world, hey, look at that. It's centered on the screen. We know that we got it working. So we have went through our first video and got a Xamarin Forms application running with Prism we got a view and a view model. Now, of course, you would say, well, Aaron, this isn't a true view model view video because you hard-coded the text in the view. And you're right. You're 100% right. That is not coolness. So let's go ahead and just fix that up, and then we'll go ahead and close this video down. I'll start the next video of getting ourselves into, let's call this message. Don't be a monster. Name our property right. String message here. And so we're just going to return message. Oop, not title message. And then set, we'll also do the same thing, set property. This is to basically get our event hired up so that the UI knows how to update when the value changes. And that's what this is all about. The notify change. If you kind of go in here and you look at set property and look at the code of that, that's a I notify change interface. I want to say, if I remember the terminology properly. And basically what ends up happening is whenever this value changes, an event gets fired off that says, hey, whoever's listening to this event, you need to know that happened. That's bindings 101. That's really what's going on behind the scenes. It's just a clean way of doing it, and the less event code you write, the less memory leak and all the kind of stuff you have to worry about in mobile applications. Over 80% of the memory leaks in my experience have been messaging and event code that is poorly written or not written in a way that makes sense. People make a lot of assumptions. So what let's just do that. So we're basically going through setting our message to hello world, and now over here in our view code, we can just bind that to the messages property. And now this would be a proper, we can go out with a bang on this and say, hey, we've got some real MVVM going on here with Prism, and we've already changed our quality of life for the better because we've got we're taking that business logic outside of the view and we're putting in the view model, and we're just saying our view is just going to have some basic code in it. So we can see here that did not work. Oh, the demo gremlins are trying to get me here. We may have to check to see whether or not main page is set up for, let's just do this real quick here. So for some reason, even though I set it up, I'm not getting my binding. Let's make sure main page is set up to talk to main page view model. And this basically keeps it, so let's talk about where I am and what I'm doing here. I was hoping to do this in the next video, but having some kind of weird thing with the binding here. Prism application. If we go in here, and this is in your shared project solution under the app XAML, there's an app XAML CS. If you go ahead and just drill into that, there's a register types. And register types, Brian's got it set up here so that we are registering what pages we'd like for navigation. And so if you don't include the view model, it's basically using if I remember right, it's a form of reflection, where he basically brings it in and says, "Oh, okay, I'll go find the view model for you." And MVVM Cross has got something very similar to that. However, there's a performance hit with that, and if you want to go through and hard code in your view model to view mapping, technically speaking, that'll be a little bit faster because it's not having to do a reflection dip or a dip to look up and find that stuff. So another tip, and I was hoping to do that in the next video. So, but let's see if we can see here and get this working. There we are. All right, now we have our message, and we can see here, hello world, hello from Xamarin Forms and Prism, hello world. Perfect. We got ourselves up and running. So what did we do there to get it working? We went through and made some modifications to map our view model to our view, and that was our final little trick we did here in our main shared code, or our PCL solution. Our project instead of our solution, excuse me. And that's it. We've got ourselves up and running, and we're ready to start doing some coding. So I'd like to try to keep these videos a little bit shorter than I have in the past, so I'm going to stop recording now. And in the next video, we're actually going to go through and nuke all the page stuff and set ourselves some master detail stuff up and get navigation working. And we'll just try to get some basic stuff working. And then the video after that, we'll do some messaging between the view models and try to making sure that we can not only bring different views up into the details portion, but we can send messages back and forth from there. That's really all cool stuff. So that's what we got coming in the future. I appreciate you guys for watching and hope you guys enjoyed this, and stick around for the next video where we get into even greater detail on this stuff.